On the day of my coronation as Duchess, I mistakenly wore Queen Catherine's Duchess gown. My husband of 10 years, Duke, glanced at me with indifference, a poor imitation, unfit for the role. The coronation ceremony was abruptly halted, and Chloe, the Grand Duchess I had raised for a decade, reprimanded me with loathing. "I knew you wanted to replace my mother. I'll never let a scheming woman like you get her way." She threw the lucky charm I had embroidered for half a year into the brazier, striking me with her small fists. A child's strength was minimal, yet it shattered. I looked at each word distinctly. My ambition was never to replace anyone, least of all to become queen. The bright sun couldn't melt the prejudice in their hearts. The Duchess gown cast aside mocked my carelessness and foolishness. Ignoring the surrounding gazes of ridicule, I only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. But Chloe suddenly reached out and grabbed me, saying, "You don't want to be queen? Why didn't you refuse when I offered you my mother's Duchess gown? Saying you don't want to replace my mother, why did you smile so happily when father promised to crown you Duchess? You promised I'd be your only child. Why did you have Olive?" Chloe's eyes were red, filled with countless grievances. But I didn't embrace and comfort her as usual, only looked at her with a calm expression, without a word. Chloe's gaze flickered under my direct stare. She feigned composure and muttered a few words. "What are you looking at? You, why aren't you explaining? The coronation ceremony wasn't completed. You're very unwilling, aren't you?" I spoke in a calm tone. "Chloe, since this is what you want to see, then I'll grant your wish. 3 days ago, the royal household sent the Duchess gown, but Chloe, who was painting, stained it with indelible paint. I wanted the royal household to get a new set, but Chloe changed her previous resentment towards me and said with a smile that she wanted to apologize to me. She also took out an exquisite gown. Although it looked a bit old, it was immediately apparent that it was well preserved. Sensing something was wrong, I asked my personal maidservant to investigate. I learned that this gown was the one Queen Catherine wore when she was crowned Lady Duchess. Realizing that it was inappropriate, I wanted Chloe to take it back. But Chloe cried and said that I had taken care of her for 10 years, and now she truly regarded me as her mother, so she wanted me to wear Queen Catherine's old gown. She also questioned if I disliked that this gown was just a Lady Duchess uniform. These words were overheard by Duke, who had just entered. He lowered his eyes and said in a deep voice that I should follow the child's wishes, and also said that I had taken care of Chloe diligently for the past 10 years. That night, Duke and Chloe had dinner together in my Springfield manor and promised to bring Olive back, who was being raised at a country estate. I was flattered, thinking that years of effort had finally earned sincerity. But Duke and Chloe's coldness and disgust completely shattered my delusions. I should have known long ago. Ice melts into water, impossible to hold on to. I gently brushed Chloe's hand away. "You're afraid I'll take the Queen's throne. Now the Duchess' coronation has been interrupted because I offended Queen Catherine. This is unprecedented in Avalon's history. In the future, I will be subject to ridicule and suspicion. You've already achieved your goal. What else are you dissatisfied with?" Chloe roared like a furious little lion. "Dissatisfied? Dissatisfied? Unless you request confinement to Icewind Keep, otherwise you're deliberately saying such things, playing hard to get to deceive me." My gaze fell on Chloe's face, her small, immature face filled with resentment towards me. I was about to speak when I looked up and saw Duke standing behind Chloe. His majestic and cold eyes had not changed in the slightest for 10 years. Chloe, seeing I didn't respond, gritted her teeth. "You're playing hard to get. You say you don't compete, yet you won't confine yourself to Icewind Keep when I ask." "Liar!" "Chloe." Duke gently called her name, and the furious Chloe was instantly soothed, pitifully hiding in his arms. Even though I gave birth to a little Grand Duchess for Duke 5 years ago, he still only had Chloe in his eyes. He even sent my child, whom I had risked my life to give birth to a country estate on the 2nd day of my delivery, to prevent me from not taking good care of Chloe. The heartbreaking pain of childbirth was far less painful than the separation of mother and daughter. But because of my family's honor and my parents stationed at the border, I had to regroup and try to please this father and daughter. But it's been 10 years. I'm really tired. For the first time, I didn't greet Duke, but looked straight at him. Your humble servant, Muriel, has offended Queen Catherine and has not taken good care of Grand Duchess Chloe, and is willing to request confinement to Icewind Keep. Duke slowly walked towards me, his deep eyes revealing no emotion. Are you arguing with me? But today you did offend Queen Catherine. I knelt and bowed my head. It is your humble servant's fault. Please your majesty confine your humble servant to Icewind Keep. I didn't refer to myself as your lady, but as your humble servant, as I did 10 years ago. Duke frowned. Chloe is just speaking in anger. Why do you have to argue with her? Moreover, she can't live without your care. As long as you apologize to her now, I can pretend I didn't hear these words. Duke thought I would bow my head and beg for their forgiveness as before. But I remained motionless in place. Chloe, waiting for my apology, rushed forward and punched me with her small fists. It's obviously you who wants to replace my mother. Why don't you apologize to me? You clearly said that you wouldn't have any children other than me. You lied to me. You're the one who let me down. The spot I injured half a month ago while saving Chloe from falling off a horse was struck by her, causing my face to twist in pain. But Duke showed a bit of impatience on his face. Chloe is only a 10-year-old child. How much strength can she have? Until the wound on my shoulder gradually bled through. Duke's face changed, and he reached out to grab Chloe. Chloe looked at the blood in surprise, but still arrogantly raised her chin. You already had an injury. Don't try to frame me. I looked at Chloe mockingly. The princess is right. Unwilling to argue with a child, I just wanted to leave this father and daughter as soon as possible. I did promise Duke that I would never conceive my own child, and I would take the contraceptive draft on time after every visit to his bed. But 5 years ago, Duke accidentally took an aphrodisiac, and that night he entangled with me desperately. When he woke up, it was already the next evening, and although I took the contraceptive draft immediately, but half a month later, the pulse check still showed that I was pregnant. Although Duke didn't say anything on the spot, his brow was always furrowed. At that time, the border war intensified, morale plummeted. Duke was angry and didn't support the grain and grass. In order to comfort the soldiers and give my father and brothers fighting at the border confidence, I had to spread the news of my pregnancy. Duke had no sons, which was fatal to a country. So when the news of my pregnancy came out, everyone thought that Avalon's throne had an heir. Morale was higher than ever before. My father and brothers defeated the barbarian prince who had been harassing the border for many years, and also captured the barbarian prince. Since then, this father and daughter had regarded me as a scheming woman, even though I later gave birth to only a little grand duchess. She was immediately sent to a country estate. Recalling the small, immature face I glimpsed in a hurry, a dull pain came from my heart. Me who did the was me who asked. Looking at Duke's eyes, I said sincerely, if your majesty considers our old relationship and is unwilling to confine your humble servant to Icewind Keep, then send your humble servant out of the palace to accompany Olive. Just say that your humble servant requested to leave the palace to pray for Avalon. Duke's brow was already stained with anger. I have already treated you with exceptional favor, and even had Olive brought into the palace. What else do you want? Even if Chloe was a bit excessive today, you've raised her for 10 years. Your failure to properly educate the princess is a grave dereliction of duty. What right do you have to be dissatisfied? I still said earnestly, I have no dissatisfaction. Please your majesty grant my request. Duke was silent for a moment before saying coldly, unprecedented for a lady to leave the palace. Since you requested confinement to Icewind Keep, I'll grant your wish. He changed his tone. If you regret it, I can also withdraw my decree. It hasn't been announced to the 4 palaces yet. I prostrated myself on the ground to accept the decree. Thank you for your majesty's grace. Muriel! Duke shouted my name through gritted teeth, and finally left with a flick of his sleeve. Icewind Keep was desolate, but I felt unprecedentedly relaxed. If I didn't enter Icewind Keep, Chloe would be even more annoyed to see me being close to Olive. Although she didn't like me, she had a great possessiveness towards me. In order to embroider the best lucky charm for her, I embroidered a full 177 before she picked out her favorite one. The rest were all burned by her in one fell swoop. At that time, Chloe said, I know you wanted to keep one for Olive, but she doesn't deserve to use the SA. Me thing as this princess. Her smile was innocent, but her deep eyes were as cold as her father's. Rough bread and uncooked greens were placed in front of me. The maidservant who delivered the food looked a bit familiar. She smiled and said, "Now you're not a lady duchess anymore, it's already very good to have these things. If it weren't for you serving your majesty for many years, I'm afraid you wouldn't even have these things." Seeing that I had no reaction, she sighed pretendingly, "Actually, as long as you bow your head to your majesty, what delicacies can't you eat? In the past, you were also a pampered young lady at home, why bother ending up like this because of a moment's anger?" A piece of bright yellow clothing was revealed behind the dilapidated door. Realizing that this was Duke awkwardly trying to give me a way out. In the past, he always reminded me through others that I was nothing without him. I could only follow them silently. After being an empty shell for 10 years, I was tired. I looked firmly at the piece of bright yellow clothing and said, "Delicacies are not as good as the simple food in front of me. Life in Icewind Keep makes me feel more relaxed than ever before. Here, I don't need to please anyone, and I don't need to consider my family's honor. No one constantly reminds me that I'm a usurper." The door slammed shut, and the piece of bright yellow clothing had disappeared. I had no interest in chasing after him to persuade him, and prepared to withdraw my gaze and eat. But a half-grown child rushed out. She had 2 cute buns tied on her head, and kept calling me mother as soon as she saw me. Although it was the first time we met, I could tell at a glance that this was my flesh and blood I had been separated from for 5 years. "Mother, father." Olive kept pointing in the direction the man had left. The maidservant delivering the food raised her eyebrows, as if I was a very ungrateful person. "Your Majesty specially brought Grand Duchess Olive, who had just arrived at the palace, in order to take you out, but you stubbornly ruined your Majesty's good intentions." I finally recognized that the maidservant in front of me was your Majesty's royal handmaiden. 10 years ago, she was Queen Catherine's dowry maidservant. Because she looked a bit like Queen Catherine, Chloe often hugged her and called her mother in the past. She said that she stayed by your Majesty's side to take care of the people that Queen Catherine couldn't bear to part with, but her often revealed true feelings exposed her. But I wasn't jealous, nor was I angry. I only said lightly, "Since you feel so sorry for your Majesty, then go see him and your Queen Catherine in my place." She glared at me angrily, "Your maidservant just can't stand your pampered appearance. You know that your Majesty has you in his heart, but you insist on pretending." After saying that, she stomped her foot and left directly. Although she called herself your maidservant, she had no respect for me in her heart. But I didn't even care about Duke anymore, so I cared even less about what the people around him thought of me. Holding Olive in my arms, I cherished the short time I had with her. Seeing the dark circles under her eyes, it was obvious that she had been suffering from insomnia for a long time. My heart softened immediately, and I used the softest fabric to sew a soothing sachet for Olive. Just as I was about to coax her to sleep, the dilapidated gate of Icewind Keep was kicked open. As soon as Chloe saw Olive in my arms, she immediately became anxious and ran forward to pull Olive away. I frowned and raised my hand to block Chloe. Her eyes turned red. "You haven't held me like that in ages, why are you holding her? See, you only care about your own child, you're never truly sincere with me." Like a pitiful little beast seeking maternal love, Chloe's tears fell down. But I frowned in confusion. "Chloe, have you forgotten what you once said?" Since Chloe was in swaddling clothes, I held her in my arms every day and coaxed her to sleep. But one day, when she was 4 years old and could remember things, she suddenly cried and said that I was pinching her. She also said that she was afraid of being pinched to death if she slept next to me. It was obvious that someone had said something in her ear, but Duke didn't investigate thoroughly, only treated it as a fragile statement from someone who had lost her mother. Not only that, but Duke also blamed me for not taking good care of Chloe, which caused her to be anxious. After that, Chloe was both my child and my ruler to me. From then on, I didn't dare to overstep the line, let alone hold her. Chloe also remembered those things, but she still argued, "Then you can't hold her either." Olive, who had just fallen asleep, was awakened but didn't cry, only shyly burrowed into my arms. Chloe became even more angry when she saw this and actually reached out to pull. I was caught off guard and was pushed to the ground. Olive screamed in fright, and I quickly protected her. My arm hit the ground with a crack, and my face turned pale with pain. But Chloe seemed to have suddenly seized something and tore off the soothing sachet I had embroidered for Olive, questioning, "Why does she get to use the same sachet as me?" I looked at Chloe's hateful eyes and sighed helplessly. "The sachet I gave you, wasn't it already thrown into the brazier by you? Moreover, she is my child. Shouldn't I do something for her?" If Chloe had a heart, she would remember that what I did for her was far more than this. Sewing clothes in the cold winter and making ice in the hot summer. Chess, calligraphy, painting, and embroidery, I did everything I could. But she still glared at me. "I knew you only cared about your own child." She threw the sachet on the ground and stomped on it until it was dirty before angrily turning her head and leaving. The resolute back view was exactly the same as her father's. Olive was frightened, but still helped me up with red eyes. She carefully wiped the sachet clean and stuffed it into her arms. "Mother, don't cry." I hugged Olive in my arms with heartache. "Before I could say anything, Your Majesty sent someone to take her away." Before leaving, Olive smiled and waved her hand to me and said, "I'll come to see Mother tomorrow." But before the next day arrived, the crying of the entire palace woke me up from my dream. My heart tightened, and I rushed out without putting on my shoes and socks. Olive's small body was full of water and mud, and her bright eyes were weakly closed. Chloe was hiding behind a maidservant, afraid to come forward, her eyes full of horror. I looked at the scene in front of me in disbelief. I rushed over like crazy and pressed her chest, trying to revive Olive. This dried-up lily pond only had a pool of water at the bottom. How could Olive drown? Moreover, she and I were only separated by a wall. How could Olive not cry for help if she fell into the water? Dozens of maidservants and nannies were prostrate on the ground, trembling. I saw Olive clutching a sachet tightly in her hand, the one I gave her. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I couldn't make a sound to cry. Chloe came forward and said with a cry, "Don't cry. From now on, I'll be your only child." She reached out to hug me, but I saw 2 fresh scratches on the back of her hand. I grabbed Chloe's collar. "You killed her." Chloe was frightened and quickly denied, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me. I just asked her to return this sachet to me. I didn't lay a hand on her." Chloe was extremely flustered, her eyes constantly flickering. After raising her for 10 years, how could I not see that Chloe was very guilty? It's just that I never expected Chloe to be so cruel. I raised my hand and slapped her in the face. With a slap, everyone didn't expect that I would hit Chloe. Chloe was stunned, and after a long while, she burst into tears. "You actually hit me? Why did you hit me?" She wanted to punch me, but I didn't endure it like before and pushed her to the ground. Chloe fell heavily on her butt, and the skin on her palm was immediately scraped. The servants were shocked and immediately stepped forward to protect Chloe. "Please calm down, Lady Duchess. Even if you are very sad about losing the little princess, there is no evidence for this matter. Moreover, Grand Duchess Chloe didn't do it on purpose. Why do you blame others for the death of the little princess?" Chloe cried aggrievedly. "I just threw the sachet into the lily pond. Who knew she would jump down to pick it up? There are so many maidservants and eunuchs. Wouldn't she let others pick it up for her? She took something she shouldn't have in the first place. What's wrong with me?" She stubbornly raised her chin, believing that everything was Olive's own fault. As I listened, I actually laughed. The child I had raised for 10 years was actually someone with such a vicious heart. Because of jealousy, she killed my child. The late Duke came and saw Chloe sitting pitifully on the ground. Seeing me glaring at his most beloved child, he scolded without thinking, "You've raised Chloe for 10 years, don't you know what kind of person she is? How could Chloe deliberately kill Olive?" I looked at Duke expressionlessly, not understanding why he would treat his children so differently when they were all his children. He refused to admit the facts before his eyes. I picked up Olive's small body and walked straight to Icewind Keep without looking at him. Chloe cried and wanted Duke to hug her, but Duke, looking at my leaving back, lost his temper with Chloe for the first time. "Why did you have to bring Olive out in the middle of the night? Nanny, take Grand Duchess Chloe back to reflect. Banned from leaving for half a year." Duke's voice was extremely loud, deliberately letting me hear his punishment of Chloe. But I only found it ridiculous. Olive lost her life. Chloe was only banned for half a year. Seeing that I was still unmoved, Duke dismissed everyone and followed behind me. He walked into the dilapidated Icewind Keep. Duke frowned slightly, and after thinking for a long time, he finally said, "Chloe was just unintentional. Why do you have to dwell on it? Anyway, what you wanted in the first place was a Grand Duke. Moreover, you and Olive haven't seen each other in 5 years, the bond between mother and daughter isn't deep. If it's to make me feel guilty, then you've succeeded. As long as you're willing to forget about this, I can give you another child." My gaze slowly moved to Duke's face. I knew he was cold-blooded, but I didn't expect him to say such cold words. Seeing that I didn't speak, Duke continued on his own, "I'm willing to give you a Grand Duke. If you give birth to a Grand Duchess, I can keep giving birth until a Grand Duke is born. After all, Avalon's throne cannot be without an heir, and that's what you've always wanted. Isn't it?" I shook my head, and Duke's face became a little unsightly. I held Olive tighter in my arms, wanting to warm her up. Duke looked at me with this unyielding appearance and said coldly, "I advise you to take what you can get and not pretend like this." He left with a flick of his sleeve, not allowing anyone to collect Olive's body. He also said that if I wanted to bury Olive in the name of Grand Duchess, I had to find him before the sun set tomorrow. But I didn't care what posthumous title I had, and Olive wouldn't care either. In the eyes of Duke and Chloe, I was a mercenary woman. I pleased them only to solidify my position. I tried my best to get pregnant in order to give birth to a Grand Duke to inherit Avalon. This disheartened appearance was also to gain more. But only I knew that I was really tired. Originally, I just wanted to silently protect Olive from across the palace walls. But they ruined everything. In that case, what need do I have to stay here? Before the sky was completely bright, a blazing fire suddenly erupted in the Icewind Keep where the deposed lady lived, illuminating the entire palace. When Duke rushed over in a panic, he could only see the charred ruins. Even he didn't notice that his voice was trembling. "Where's the Lady Duchess?" The little eunuch carrying the bucket didn't dare to answer at all and knelt on the ground with a thud. Duke roared, "Where's the Lady Duchess? I'm asking you where the Lady Duchess is." The burning Icewind Keep only had thick smoke that hadn't completely dissipated, choking Duke's throat. But he didn't care at all and roared, "I want to see her alive or dead, find her." Everything had been burned away here, and even if someone died inside, they would have turned to ashes long ago. Everyone knew that Duke was demanding the impossible, but no one dared to speak. The palace servants carefully searched every detail, not noticed. Duke stood in place. The few words I said to him kept flashing in his mind. He had the thought of regret for the first time. If he had known there would be a fire, if he had known this would happen, he shouldn't have been stubborn, he should have brought me out of Icewind Keep at all costs. Duke grabbed his hair in annoyance, and the maids and eunuchs didn't dare to stop him when they saw this scene, only lowered their heads and pretended not to see it. Finally, a royal guard noticed something wrong. "Your Majesty, the fire broke out too suddenly. It doesn't seem like an accidental fire, but more like..." Duke's scarlet eyes were full of murderous intent. "What do you mean? Someone harmed them?" The royal guard said with difficulty, "Although this is Icewind Keep, the palace gate wasn't locked. If there was a fire, they could have run out directly. Moreover, your humble servant found traces of accelerant poured in the corner. It may have been the Lady Duchess herself." Lady C. Admitting suicide is a serious crime, and the remaining words. The royal guard didn't dare to say it, but how could Duke not guess it? But he still didn't believe it. Impossible. She's so greedy for life and afraid of death, loves power and influence, how could she commit suicide by burning herself? He roared that he would dig 3 feet into the ground to find me, and he declared to crown me as Grand Duchess regardless. This was the first Grand Duchess in Avalon, a great honor. Everyone said that I had great fortune, but I smiled coldly in my heart. The best 10 years of a girl's life not only lost her health but also lost a child. Whoever wants such fortune can take it. Even after escaping to the outskirts of the Westlands, I could still inevitably hear about the deeds of that father and daughter. "Have you heard?" This Grand Duchess's coronation was as magnificent as the Queen's ceremony. Grand Duchess Chloe has also been transferred to the Grand Duchess's name, just because Your Majesty pities the Grand Duchess for not giving birth to a son or daughter. Speaking of which, the Grand Duchess's family background is ordinary. Being able to become a Lady Duchess is already a blessing from her ancestors. I don't know what extraordinary skills she has. I heard that Zhao Fian of the previous dynasty was very skilled in the art of the tent. In order to serve in bed, she did not hesitate to take a contraceptive draught. This Lady Duchess has been without children for many years and is still favored, presumably. Several people gave knowing smiles. I frowned with some displeasure, but I didn't want to say anything. But the Sir Lancelot who had been sitting by the door suddenly threw a cup of tea, which happened to block the mouth of the person who spoke. The man spat out the teacup and slammed the table. But when he saw the unique azure cloud sword in Sir Lancelot's hand, he instantly lost his voice. Not only did he put down the money and leave in disgrace, but he also smiled and said, "I have eyes but didn't recognize Mount Tai." I said some dirty words that dirted the gentleman's ears. Please forgive me. I had long heard that there was a Sir Lancelot in the world, who was not only the #1 martial artist in the world, but also had a transcendent swordsmanship. I inconspicuously asked the waiter to send him a plate of appetizers to express my gratitude to him. When I walked to the back kitchen, I saw the Sir Lancelot standing under the tree, looking straight at me. At the moment our eyes met, I only felt that there was some familiarity between his eyebrows, but I didn't take it to heart. "Sir, this is just an ordinary tavern. Who are you looking for?" After a long time, he sighed, "You left the palace without sending a letter to your family." Fortunately, my parents know that my sister is not the kind of person who would go down with the ship. Although Your Majesty intends to hide the fire, how could my parents not have any connections after being officials for many years? My heart couldn't help but be shocked. The handsome face in front of me gradually overlapped with the 7 or 8-year-old younger brother in my memory. 10 years ago, when I entered the palace, he was just a child crying for candy, but now he's actually a heroic swordsman. Removing the veil, my younger brother's eyes welled up. "Sis, you've gotten ugly." There was a hint of a sob in his voice, yet he feigned indifference, producing a letter. "Mom and Dad didn't believe you'd commit suicide. They sent many people to inquire about you in secret. I've been wandering for 5 years. This time, Mom and Dad gave me this letter, telling me to give it to you if I ever saw you. No matter what you do, we're behind you." The ice in my heart melted completely with my brother's words. I was indeed not one to seek death easily. But I was also unwilling to remain by Duke's side. Without completely disappearing from this world, I could never truly escape the palace. So, I had to fake my death. To avoid implicating my family, I had no other choice. After all, such a thing, once exposed, would mean the extermination of our entire family. Yet, they didn't blame me, but stood firmly behind me, urging me to move forward. I unfolded the letter. My father's vigorous handwriting was as it always had been, the characters progressing from neat and tidy at the beginning to gradually becoming smaller and more cramped together. Short as the paper was, it was filled with my parents' worries. Tears could no longer be contained. I threw myself into my younger brother's arms. Only at that moment did I finally realize. The younger brother who once sought my hugs and comfort was now a hero who could shield me from the storm. "Muriel! What are you doing?" A man's roar interrupted my reunion with my younger brother. Hearing the familiar voice, I instantly stiffened, afraid to turn around. From the moment he had someone impersonate me to complete the Grand Duchess coronation, I knew Duke would never let me go easily. He coldly pulled me from my younger brother's embrace. "I knew you weren't dead." Chloe peeked out from behind him, and seeing me look at her expressionlessly, her eyes instantly turned red, filling with tears. But this time, Chloe didn't show her usual arrogance, but softly said, "Mother, I was wrong. I was too spoiled before and hurt you. I'll be obedient from now on." She sniffled, "Olive's death really had nothing to do with me. Father has investigated it thoroughly." That day, I threw the sachet into the lily pond and left. Olive wanted to retrieve it, but a maid covered her mouth and pushed her in. "You misunderstood me. Olive was actually murdered, she didn't die because of me. After saying these words, Chloe seemed relieved, raising her eyes with a hopeful look. Come back to the palace with father, okay? I miss you so much. Let's be a family of 3, just like before. I coldly looked at Chloe, thinking, gee, I wouldn't know the maid's identity if she didn't mention it. She really treated me like a fool. I didn't know how Duke found me. But since I set Icewind Keep on fire, I never intended to return. Seeing that I was unmoved after Chloe spoke, Duke's eyes darkened. A lady fleeing the palace and insider is the determination of. But I know you love me to death. This man is just a tool you're using to force me to give in. I'm willing to indulge you. You've played enough. Come back to the palace. Royal guards appeared from nowhere, surrounding me and my younger brother in a moment. Hearing Duke's words, I realized he didn't recognize my younger brother. He mistook him for my lover, and generously allowed me to return to the palace. It was simply laughable. Your Majesty, you've mistaken me. I've lived here since I was a child. I may resemble your acquaintance, but I'm definitely not the person you know. When I first came here, I had prepared for everything. The tavern owner had worn a veil for years, and almost no one had seen her true face. When I escaped here, she was already terminally ill, but she had no children or family. I took care of her funeral arrangements, inherited her identity, and continued to be a tavern owner. No matter how Duke investigated, I was just an ordinary tavern owner. Duke's deep eyes remained fixed on me. Do you think you can get rid of me by saying these words? If you think the Grand Duchess position isn't enough, I can make you queen in a few years after you give birth to a prince. Once, I had desperately hoped Duke would say these words. He was an excellent ruler. How could I not be moved? I also longed to become the wife he acknowledged. But this feeling was soon shattered by Duke's own hands. After giving birth to Olive, he had me drink a bowl of cold medicine. He said this medicine was only needed once a year, not after every intimate encounter. But I had just given birth, and this bowl of cold medicine directly caused me to bleed uncontrollably, forever losing my ability to be a mother. But Duke didn't notice at all, and even felt he was doing me a favor. Drinking too much contraceptive draft is ultimately bad for your health. This medicine only needs to be taken once a year, but it's what I specially sought out for you. He brutally took me, and even if I cried out in pain, it would be seen as a game of playing hard to get. To him, I was just a favored doll to be summoned and dismissed at will. Not worthy of having my own emotions, nor worthy of having my own feelings. I would never want to return to such days. I coldly looked at Duke. I would rather die than be confined within the palace walls. Please, Your Majesty, understand. Duke's expression was ugly, and Chloe trembled in fear, but she no longer dared to throw herself into my arms. My younger brother stood in front of me. We've been married for years, sharing everything husband and wife should, only my travels keep it secret. Does Your Majesty have a fondness for taking another man's wife? My younger brother looked at Duke mockingly. Duke was indeed provoked, gritting his teeth and staring at me. I shielded my younger brother. Whatever Your Majesty has in mind, please stop here. With Duke's proud personality, humbling himself to come here to invite me was already a great concession. Moreover, I threatened him with death, preferring death to returning to the palace with him. Duke threw down the sentence, since you don't appreciate my kindness, I will never waste my feelings on a woman as promiscuous as you. Duke grabbed Chloe and turned to leave, but he walked very slowly, as if waiting for me to chase after him. Chloe also kept turning back to call me, but I didn't react at all. Only when they completely disappeared from sight did I finally move. I looked back at my younger brother in fear. You rashly spoke just now, aren't you AF? Afraid of angering him? My younger brother shrugged indifferently. Although I can't beat the royal guards he brought, I can still safely escape with you. He already knows about this place. After returning to the palace, Duke will definitely investigate my identity, and then he will know that we are deliberately angering him. Sister, let's run away. I shook my head. The entire world is the Emperor's land. Unless I die, I can't escape at all. And based on my understanding of Duke, If he knew about my relationship with my younger brother, he would only be more angry and annoyed, and would not come to find me. Everything was as I expected. Duke really didn't come to find me, but the fact that the Grand Duchess's influence and favor in the palace rivaling the Queen's was well known to everyone. He was also much more lenient to my father and brothers than before. Chloe wrote me many letters, saying she wanted to see me. I didn't reply to any of them. She only dared to look at me from afar, seeing that I would rather tease the neighbors' children than pay attention to her. She only dared to shed tears of loneliness and leave. I didn't feel sorry at all. She personally threw my maternal love for her into the fire. And it was because of her that Olive died. No one would harm Olive for no reason, only Queen Catherine's people would feel sorry for Chloe, and would be willing to harm Olive for Chloe's sake. Finally, when Chloe turned around in tears again, I set fire to the tavern again. I came to a new place again. Once found, I would disappear in a fire. Over time, Chloe and Duke no longer dared to look for me. They were afraid that I would completely disappear one day. Every time they saw the burned ruins, they would feel uncontrollably frightened, as if their souls had been taken away. I finally found peace and started a new life happily and carefree. My parents, elder brother, and younger brother would come to see me from time to time, and I always carried Olive's ash. With me. I take her to see all the splendor and beauty, experiencing everything she never had.